Let's look for the YouTube. There you go. Regina?
Yes, I see. Good evening, and thank you for joining us in our 24th Transforming Lives webinar, which is brought to you by the Belvedere Seventh-day Adventist Church, Georgia, in association with Premier Entertainment Service, Jamaica. It is our hope that these webinars will be transformational and help us all to be fitted for the kingdom of God. Now we ask that we each continue to be respectful in the comment section, and also that we continue to respect the opinion of the panelist and the moderator. For those of you watching on YouTube, we want to thank you for joining us, and please feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And please turn on your post notifications so that you'll be updated whenever we post on the channel. Our moderator this evening is Dr. Karen Lewis Harvey, and she's no stranger to our platform. She has a doctorate in emergency medicine and has been practicing for over 20 years. Her practice has taken her through Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and the United States of America. She is the mother of 3 boys who have made her a very proud mom. Now, please feel free to ask your questions or raise your hands in the comment section, as our moderator will give you an opportunity to be heard. I am Regina Bullock, your host, and it's my pleasure to hand you over to our moderator. However, before I do so, I'll ask God's blessing on this discussion. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for giving us life, health, and strength to come back this evening to discuss this very important topic. I pray, Lord, that as we discuss, that our minds will be enlightened and that many people will see and be informed about this topic. Please open the minds of the panelists so that they may impart the right information, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another program. It is wonderful to be here again and have you as a wonderful audience as usual. We have a number of panelists this afternoon actually, and I'll introduce them. The first person we have is Dr. Keith Weatherburn, who is new to this program. Welcome, Dr. Weatherburn. Now, Dr. Weatherburn is a consultant urologist in Jamaica, and he has majority of his studies were done at the University of the West Indies, where he has a MBBS degree and also a DM in general surgery. And he's a part of the Fellowship of the Royal College of Edinburgh, and he's been a consultant for 36 years. I know Dr. Weatherburn has 3 adult children, and he's married to 1 wife. And the next person we have is Dr. Samuel Bulgin, who is the pastor of the Atlanta Belvedere Church. He's a senior pastor there for the last 9 years, and he has a doctorate in ministries, and he has authored quite a few books. The other person we have joining us today is Dr. Anthony Gordon. I think he just joined. Welcome, Dr. Gordon. Dr. Anthony L. Gordon is a counseling psychologist. He's PhD. He's a certified family educator and practicing family relation health therapist. And he's been serving in this capacity for many years. He's been the principal for 3 schools and he has authored many books. He and his wife, Dolores, of 44 plus years, have actually established Family Relational Health International. The Gordons actually have 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren, and Dr. Gordon's motto is people need people. Welcome. At this time, Dr. Weatherburn, okay, the program this evening is actually about erectile dysfunction. And I know it's going to be a very, very interesting program. I know it's very topical. A lot of people are interested in this topic for many different reasons, but I know we'll benefit from this discussion. And we are all about holistic medicine. And what we preach is that your entire body, spirit, mind, we're all interconnected. And Dr. Wedderburn this afternoon is going to do a short presentation on erectile dysfunction, and after which we'll go into a robust discussion with our audience on different aspects of erectile dysfunction. So at this time, I hand over to Dr. Wedderburn, who will do that presentation for us. Thank you, Dr. Wedderburn.
Thank you very much, Karen, for your introduction. Good evening. Those of you who are listening or watching online, I'm really glad to be a part of this discussion this afternoon. Now, the topic is erectile dysfunction. Let me differentiate this problem with sexual dysfunction, because most people think of erectile dysfunction as sexual dysfunction, but they're different. Erectile dysfunction is the inability to get an erection and keep it in order to have sexual intercourse. On the other hand, sexual dysfunction could mean things like a soft erection, premature ejaculation, you cannot really have the proper libido. Your libido is down, yes? Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, but erectile dysfunction is the inability to get and keep an erection that is hard enough for penetration. And this has to be consistent over a period of at least 6 months. Why do I say that? Because, you know, men on a whole, they come home tired sometimes and they try to have sex and nothing happens. But we cannot say this is just erectile dysfunction, because it has to be consistent over a period of time. Now, what are the causes of erectile dysfunction? You know, some men may think this as a very simple thing, and oh, we're getting old, so that's not a problem. Most men have this problem, but it is very important to note that erectile dysfunction is linked to heart disease, ischemic heart disease. And this is how sometimes we diagnose men with serious heart problem, having presented to the urologist with inability to get an erection and to keep it for sexual intercourse. Why is this so? The penis has to get blood in it for it to be erect. And for it to get blood, it needs healthy arteries. The arteries are the vessels that supply blood to the penis. And if these vessels are not patent, if they don't have the proper lumen, then there's going to be a decreased blood flow. The same thing happens to the heart. If the heart, the blood vessels, the cardiac vessels are not patent, then not enough blood goes to the heart and the individual gets a heart attack, coronary artery disease, right? So there's a link. So the first thing that I need to say is that cardiovascular problem, heart disease can be a problem in men who have erectile dysfunction. Then we think of diabetes. Diabetics tend to have a problem with their vessels as well. Not only with the vessels, but with the nerves. Because Not only the blood flow to the penis is necessary for erection, but you need to have the proper nerve stimulation from the brain to the peripheral nerves that stimulate vessels to dilate. Because the vessels in the penis must dilate for blood to flow. And if these vessels are constricted, if they don't dilate, then blood doesn't come in and you have a soft erection. Right? The next thing we have are men who have high cholesterol. High cholesterol, like fats in the blood, this can cause blockage of these arteries as well. So it's very important whenever a man has erectile dysfunction, he gets his blood cholesterol checked. Because if it is high, not only can cause erectile dysfunction, it can also cause heart attack. Then we have men who have high blood pressure. Hypertension is another risk factor for men to get erectile dysfunction. And not only the disease, but most time the medication they're taking for this problem can decrease the blood flow to the penis and render this man erectile dysfunction. Men who use drugs, men who smoke cigarettes, men who smoke ganja, men who drink alcohol, all these are factors that can result in erectile dysfunction. Now there are some psychological problems as well. Yeah, because ED is not only a physical problem, but can also affect from the mind. And this is where Pastor Gordon comes in. He will, I'm sure, expand more on that. But rest assured that men who have stress problem, they have issues with financing, issues at work, issues in their family life, all this can cause a problem with the erection. Now, how is this condition diagnosed? Most men who have this problem are not willing to speak to their doctor. They go to the doctor for anything else. Say, doc, I'm not pain in my back, I'm burning up past my urine, you're not feeling right. But they don't willingly tell a doctor that, doc, it's not getting up. It's only when the spouse takes them there and the doctor said, Mrs. Brown, why did you brought your husband? Oh, doc, I'm sure he doesn't want to tell you, but he's not functioning. I'm going to leave him. Yeah, they actually say, I'm going to leave him because he's just not functioning. But what one needs to know is that as a man ages, age is also a factor. So one who is 70 years of old cannot expect to be functioning as if he was 20 or 30. Because as you age, your male hormone testosterone decreases, your blood vessels also get damaged, and all of these will add up to present with erectile dysfunction. Now, how is ED treated? Treatment for the physical ED depends on medication to dilate and relax the vessels so more blood can go into the penis. So we have medications like 5-phosphodiesterase 5, and what these drugs do, they cause the blood vessels in the penis to relax and more blood is pulled in the penis to cause erection. Drugs like Cialis, I'm sure everybody heard about Cialis, Viagra, Levitra. These are tablets that when they're taken, they cause dilatation of these vessels. Let me point out that men who have heart disease and they're taking nitrates to dilate the cardiac vessels should not take these tablets. Why? Because when they take these tablets together with nitrates, it can cause a precipitous drop in their blood pressure, and this can result in death. Note, I did not say men who have heart disease alone, but men who are taking these nitrates, because men with heart disease can take Viagra. The only men who are exempted are those who are nitrates. The other thing that can be used, we can use an external means like a vacuum pump, which is a cylindrical glass tube that is fitted over the penis, and a vacuum is created. And once a vacuum is created, it pulls blood into the penis. And when the penis is rigid, a rubber band is actually slid from the cylinder onto the penis, on the base of the penis, and this keeps the blood in the penis. The man has intercourse, and when it's finished, the rubber band is removed, and the piece goes flaccid. Then we can have a surgery. We can put in implants. These are implants that are used with inflatable implants, which are put into the corporal cavernous. So these are tubes in the penis through which the blood flows. Or we can put in malleable rigid tubes, which can be adjusted depending on when the man wants to have sex. Usually, there's also an injection. These are vasoactive drugs, which are injected into the penis. And once these drugs are injected, it causes the vessels to dilate, and blood is actually flowing in the penis. Now, one needs to know that for one to have an erection, the thought process must be there. It's not just a matter of, it's a physical thing. You have to be in the mood, yes? So the mood has to be appreciated, right? The other thing is that for one to be fit sexually, you have to be fit physically. So if you think you want to have a good erection, you must make sure you're fit. And how are you going to get fit? You must exercise. So exercise is a very important part of keeping your penis erect. There are some natural things that are being used. I'm not an expert on natural medications, but men will come and say they use like ginseng and other things which are given to them. But what I heard recently, most of these natural things are laced with pharmaceutical medication. They say there's a small amount of Viagra and Cialis in these medications, and that's why most of them work. But the thing is that one needs to understand that the psychological part of it is important, because in your family setting, you may have issues, and if these are not resolved, then no way you can have a proper erection to have intercourse with your spouse. Dr. Harvey?
Thank you, Dr. Wedderburn. Yes, we learned quite a bit about erectile dysfunction, and I'm happy that you actually made a distinction between sexual dysfunction and erectile dysfunction. And it so happens that this is last night. I was talking to to Brother Spence, and I was actually on a Zoom call. We were talking, and then I was saying something about, he was asking, the question was, can women have erectile dysfunction? And everybody in that just heard erectile dysfunction, and they just started taking up the conversation. And I'm like, they say, what you said? I said, I'm on a call. I'm on a call, but they were all hearing me. There were about 8 people who were on the Zoom call from church. And they just heard me on the conversation, of course, because my mic was open. And I was saying, women don't have erectile dysfunction. They might have sexual dysfunction, but they don't usually have, right, Dr. Wedderburn?
I agree with you. I agree with you.
So I was saying to them, women do not. And that is something that people are saying, yes, can they have erectile dysfunction? And I said, no, women have sexual dysfunction, not erectile dysfunction. And I'm happy that you...
The clitoris has vasculature.
It's an erectile organ, yes.
Yeah, but it's not necessary for it to be erect for a woman to have sexual intercourse.
Correct.
Yeah? It's just an organ that's there, which really, it can be excited, yes, but it's not necessary.
Right. And that's why I said to them, because remember in Africa and other places where women have been mutilated in that way.
Right.
So the sexual pleasure, they may be devoid of it, but they can still have sexual intercourse.
Right. Definitely.
Correct. So, Dr. Wedderburn, there's something that I heard you say, and it's something that's really, really, really important, and that is the fact that hypotensive medications to treat high blood pressure can actually cause a decrease in your ability to perform sexually. And a lot of men will say, I am not taking the medications because it's going to cause me to have erectile dysfunction. And as a result of not taking the medication, they really get erectile dysfunction because they damage their vessels.
Yeah,
Now,
because,
how do we address this problem? How do we get them? Because I always say, there are medications that you can take. How do you get them to go to their doctor and work with their doctor to give them medications that will not cause this problem?
okay, the thing is that when a patient goes to a doctor for high blood pressure treatment and they go to the pharmacy, take the medication, some men may say, but wait, I'm getting a bit slow. They slow up, they find that the erection gets soft, and they stop taking it because they say they don't want to have impotence. This is the other term for erectile dysfunction. Now, the best thing for them to have done is to go back to their doctor and say, Doc, since I'm on this medication, I'm a bit slow. The doctor can change it to something else because there are some blood pressure pills that really will not cause this problem, but others that can. So they need to go and speak to their doctor. The doctor will actually give them something else from what they gave them first time. Okay? Which is very important.
Great. Yes, thank you so much. And we know that erectile dysfunction actually leads to low self-esteem. And this can actually cause some psychological problems that can worsen the whole problem. Dr. Gordon, how do we address this problem, and how do we get individuals, especially those who are having the issue and those who perceive that they're having the issue? Because it's not necessarily that they're having the issue, it could be a perception. How do we get them to actually man up so they can actually go to their doctors? And the other thing is not just go to their doctor, because it's not just going to their doctor, it's communication, because sometimes they don't communicate with their partners. Not hearing you at all. No sound. Okay, in the meantime that Dr. Gordon is trying to get his sound going, Dr. Wedderburn.
Yes.
You spoke about that a lot of times patients will present to you with erectile dysfunction, and you find that their cause, or the underlying cause is something more sinister, like they have high blood pressure or atherosclerosis or some other heart disease or something. And
I'm okay.
You're okay now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Dr. Wedderburn, let me give Dr. Gordon a chance to answer this question.
All right. Thank you. So good to be with you, and of course, to be sharing platform again with my friend and my urologist, if I might just say that right out front, Dr. Wedderburn. All right. Yes, Doc. Good to see you and good to hear. And thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Yes. Nice to share again with you. May I just share my screen? I'd like to bring another perspective. If I might get a chance to share screen. All right. Okay. First thing, I just want to anchor something here, that there is a social salacious ignorance, that's what I call it, social salacious ignorance as it relates to erectile dysfunction. At the moment, the subject is announced, some heads prick up and say, yes, sir, wonder what happened to him now. And we do not have, so one of the reasons, as you asked me, Dr. Harvey, that men shy away is this attitude in society to the whole issue as though it is not an illness. I'd like to talk a little briskly about what I call the biblical and biological perspective and affirmation of it. So instead of talking about erectile dysfunction, I want to look at consider the positive creation allusion to God-designed erectile functionality. First of all, we all know this base text, Genesis 1:27. God made man in his image. And then God mandated him, be fruitful and multiply. Notice that these texts allude to the man's sexuality and understandably erectile functionality. So here's two key points. That God's biddings are his enablings. He said to the man, be fruitful and multiply, which means that when God told him, and of course, both of them together, God knew that how he made the man to function. So hence my term, erectile functionality. I could agree then, I ask you to agree with me that our sexual functions are conceived in the mind of God. So the reason I bring this out is to elevate the subject to more than just a psychosocial factor. This is part from a Christian perspective. Our erectile functionality is part of God's plan. Hence, when David said, fearfully and wonderfully made, he's talking about the physiology. He's alluding to his physiology. And then when he says, marvelous are thy work, and that my soul knoweth right well, my soul, alluding to the mind, he was then talking about the psychological aspect of his being. The total man. Then look at Hebrews 13:4. Marriage is honorable, and the bed, and I always say when I strike that word bed, it's not talking about the bed where the husband and wife merely sleep. It's talking about where they engage in healthy, holy sexual intercourse. And for the man, naturally, to engage with his wife in holy, healthy sexual intercourse, he must have erectile functionality. Children are a heritage of the Lord. Alluding again. So if you were to go through the Bible, you can see that the subject of erectile functionality is part of God's design. Now, unfortunately, we know that sin has affected it. By the way, take this reference to Moses. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, nor is natural force abated. Now, in the medical world, we know about in Western medicine, the QI, also known as the Qi from the Chinese origin of the vital force of life. Loosely translated in my research, the life force that drives every activity in organic life forms, according to this there. Now, please note, Dr. Wedderburn alluded, he didn't use the word stagnation, but that's what it means. So when sexual, or rather erectile dysfunction, and by extension, sexual dysfunction are result of the stagnation. Sin has affected the whole system. So again, I said, raising sexual dysfunction to a higher level. We understand that as Christians, it is something that we are not to take lightly. The digestive system, Doc talked about that. The mental system, respiratory system. Look where I'm coming down to now. Here we go. Here's Dr. Wedderburn. The circulatory system. Aha. And now we land the reproductive system and certainly the central nervous system. The whole system, as he said, is involved. The issue now is, why is the social taboo? Why do men so cagey? Amen. By the way, let me share something with you. Many, many years ago, I remember one sister said to me, counselor, you're not coming to our church. I need you to come and talk to us married people. Because some of us women, I'm going to stop sharing right now and finish my point. Some of us women are suffering, counselor, because, and she was very straight and honest. She said, listen to me, doc. I had my bath the other day. And when I stood before the mirror and looked at myself, I said, but wait a minute, nothing wrong with me. But Dr. Wedderburn, she went on to say, and the man is as cold as ice.
Yes.
No. So that is why I anchor what doctor said, that in treating the issue, the women, the wives have to be a part of this because they are affected. Now, the bar talk, here we go now. The bar talk. The talk in the men's room and the pornography and all these issues psychosocially, psychosomatically, note that word, psychosomatically, affects the man functionality. So when doctors just hit it straight home, he said, it's not just it's a physiological function first, primarily, but secondarily, it is psychological stress. When a relationship is unhealthy, let me say this to you. I'm quoting, counselor, let me tell you something. My wife and I, we're not getting it on. And again, he was graphic said. So right now, if she even strip herself naked before me, it now move me. Again, so the impact of unhealthy relationships, stress, and by the way, performance anxiety is another key issue. That's why men have to be wary about what they hear others say. Yeah, man, listen to me. Me can't stay up for all too. How many hours, And boy, and by the way, there are the women too, yes, who hear some of these in the girls' talk and come home now and expect their man to be this giant who's going to stay long. And so when he gets that, anxiety trips in. You talk about, doctor, about his self-esteem. Boy, am I going to be able to make it? And just that fear alone reduces his libido ability. So what I try to say there in a nutshell, from a spiritual, biblical, psychosocial perspective, erectile dysfunction is a major issue. And the way we're approaching it is important, that we remove from it the salacious, yes, sir, let's hear about this. It's a serious matter. And I can tell you, from a family relational health practitioner perspective, it is wreaking havoc. And that is why we need to have a discussion like this. And praise the Lord, we're putting in a perspective that can help. I trust that my input there, Doc, helped to answer the question you asked.
It absolutely did, Dr. Gordon. It absolutely did. Amen. And it is important, and I'm so happy that you touched on the biblical aspect, because God expects us, as you say, he made us in his image, and he expects us to have healthy lives, and healthy lives is holistic. It means yes. If we're not healthy, we can't make healthy children, correct?
We can't make any children.
Yes. One more question for Dr. Wedderburn. Dr. Wedderburn, there is this association between centripetal fat, that means fat around the waist, and erectile dysfunction. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Yes. Well, in fact, most men as they age, they tend to gather fat around their waist, yes? And if one looks into it, a lot of these men are suffering from a metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome includes men who have a low testosterone, they are diabetic, they have high cholesterol, and they're overweight. Their BMI is high, right? So whenever a man starts putting on weight around his flanks and his belly, he needs to do something about that because it can result in him having erectile dysfunction. So whenever he goes to the doctor is going to do his blood tests to see if he has diabetes, to see if he has high cholesterol. He's going to do a hormone study to see if his testosterone is low and his BMI. And if these are abnormal, then he's advised he has to go on an exercise program, he has to go on a diet and take medication. But it's a fact that the metabolic syndrome can result in erectile dysfunction.
Okay, somebody put a question in the chat and it says, what kind of exercise is recommended? And anybody wants to take that? And if nobody takes it, I'll just answer it. But go ahead, Dr. Wedderburn.
Okay, well, the fact is that ED not only affects men in their 60s, 70s, or 80s. Men as young as 40 can have a problem. I know the younger you are, the more vigorous exercise you're to do. So you find that men who are 40 should do exercise with weights, yeah? And as you get older, you do more cardio like walking, maybe jogging, yes? But exercise that you sweat, yeah? You need to exercise to lose calories, not just lifting a dumbbell 10 times. You have to work out to sweat. Swimming is good, yes? Swimming is a very good exercise for this, yeah? Walking, yeah? Running, skipping, yes, all these is cardio exercises, yeah?
Right,
And
so it's exercise based on your health issues, because there are some exercises that's depending on who you are, you're unable to do, but you should at least get exercise in. If you can try to get at least 20 minutes per day, that would be good, but you should get exercise in as much as possible. And this is tailored because somebody who has some heart disease, for example, heart failure or something, you don't expect them to be running and jogging because they're unable to do that, but they might be able to do a little swimming, they may be able to walk a little bit. So these are some things that's tailored. And there are some people who can walk for 5 hours. That's Dr. What's our doctor's name again from Texas, who can walk 5 hours per day, and that's fine.
No,
and that's
Dr. Bryce.
Dr. Bryce, thank you. Dr. Bryce can walk 5 hours per day.
5 miles, not 5 hours.
Oh, sorry, 5 miles per day. Not hours, miles. He can walk 5 miles per day, and he's fine with his 5 miles. Somebody can probably walk half a mile, and that's all they can walk. But it
Go ahead.
Yes. So it all depends. But Dr. Bulgin.
Yes, ma'am.
So is it sin for somebody who knows all of this and do not take care of themselves and are unable to honor their duties of marriage? How would you address that in a Christian way?
We live in a sinful world. And there are times when we do everything that we know to do, and we still experience these diseases. And so when that happens, the counsel is not to panic. The counsel really is to go to the source, go to the Lord, talk to him about the way things are in your life. Turn your life situations into prayer. And ask for the strength to correct what needs to be corrected. In fact, we are not sinless because we have the strength within ourselves to live a life void of sin. All of us are affected by sin. All of us have sin within us. It is the forgiveness that comes from God, that rids us of the stress and the strain associated with sin, because sin naturally leads to guilt, and guilt leads to manifest itself into some of the diseases that Dr. Wedderburn and Dr. Gordon, have mentioned. So when we live a high stress life, when we live a life high in anxiety, it can lead to, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, clogged arteries, heart disease, obesity, all of those things. So the point here is that we need to accept who we are and where we are, be open and honest about it, talk to the Lord about it, go seek the necessary help that is available to us, rather than give up and say, this is the way I am, there's no help for me, poor me. A healthy sense of self is important when we recognize that there's a commonality as it relates to sin. My sin might not be yours, and yours might not be mine. So I should be free to own the sin, as the apostle says, the sin that easily beset us, and we should run with patience the race that is set before us. So don't allow the sin to beat you down in the ground, but know that there is cure, there is forgiveness with God, and that God will supply the strength to get the power or the victory over the sin.
Go ahead, Dr. Gordon.
I thank Dr. Bulgin for the way he answered from the pastoral perspective, and I share every sentiment. I'd like to just do a little extension to that with direct pointedness to the question. I picked up an element in the question which says, if the man refuses knowingly, is careless, is it sin? And I go further to say, does it compromise his ability to be healthy and therefore make his wife and family happy? Yes, it does. He that knoweth to do right and doeth it not, to him it is sin. There are the question of carelessness. Look, I'm sorry, but I can only speak from some of these experiences. I remember many years ago, I was in a church dealing with relationship. And it was a deacon who said, I'm going to tell you as he said it in Jamaican church, where him can tell me, making reference to me, where him can tell me about my life. And he was very spirit. He said, after him trousers, those are international, don't understand it. His pants, after my pants is not bigger than his. In other words, what he was saying, look, nobody can tell me how to run my life. Now, some attitudes like that are grossly unhealthy, physiologically, and indeed spiritual. So such person who big up themselves and tell themselves that nobody can tell me how to do my life and so on and so on. Indeed, Pastor, they need to pray, because at the end of the day, their dysfunctionality, to some extent, is laid at their feet, and they compromise the quality of their health. So sometimes, we have to speak it very straight. So brother, if you're careless, sister, if you're careless, you're accountable for your carelessness. Of course, thank the Lord, grace is sufficient, but he must first of all be made to accept that I am doing wrong by neglecting the counsels I'm being given. With you, Pastor, that's my take on it. If he knows to do it and he doesn't, and he neglects to do it, he's accountable.
Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. and this is very important, especially in our society, or especially in our church, where we are cautioned we believe the principles of the Bible, and we're cautioned to obey the word of God. Now, there's a question in the chat also about diet, and what role does diet play in the prevention of ED?
You want me to address that?
Go ahead, Doc.
Okay. When one thinks of obesity, yes, metabolic syndrome, for one to get overweight, for one to get high cholesterol, for one to get diabetes, hypertension, these are most time based on one's diet. So if one decides to consume a lot of animal products, more so red meat, a lot of starches in their diet, yes, a lot of ice cream and all those fancy things, yeah, these will definitely let you put on weight, and this can cause you to have ED. Yeah, so a diet is very important. If you're a vegetarian, a vegetarian lifestyle should be the gold standard, right? Not to say if you want to eat a piece of fish, you're sinning, but we're talking about health now. The gold standard diet should be a vegetarian diet. Just to divert a bit, some men, when they have this condition, they decide to take home remedies. They'll go and buy roots, and they'll use oysters and use a lot of stuff because they think the natural things are better. But pharmaceutical drugs have been tested and proven to help this condition. As Dr. Baldwin said, when you're stressed from whatever you're doing, the stress can eradicate everything and make your penis soft. You can get an erection. So addressing this stress, praying to God to help you to get rid of all these problems, that could be a very significant part in helping one with erectile dysfunction.
Thank you so much, Doc. Now, there's another question in terms of there are men who are sole breadwinners in their family and they work all the time. They work morning, evening, night, noon, as much as they possibly can in an attempt to have financial success. And as a result of that, these people neglect the whole reason or their whole family in terms of their what would I say, in terms of the happiness of their family, because they're definitely working so much, and as a result of this, they're not able to perform sexually. They sometimes have erectile dysfunction because of this stress. How do we advise them in an attempt to reap financial success? They have to work so much. How do we advise? Dr. Gordon, can you address this?
Yes. The answer to that is BALANCE, balance. I said that to say, and please note that given the scenario you painted, again, this is where his wife or the lady in his life is a factor in that. Because if he feels, and I'm speaking here from my practice experience at counselor, understand, my wife demanding and we have to provide. So, and so he burns out, there's the word, he burns out in the interest of living up to expectation. But then there's a compromise, because when he lives up to the material support, the emotional support is compromised. And so both parties need to sit down together. And that's why relational health therapy is important, because when matter like that is in place, the parties, husband and wife, need to really sit with a professional and help to address the management, the dynamics of their living. He has to address his rest, his sleep, the ends balance. So if he is skewed to providing the material and I hear somebody say you should get rid of the digger and the gold digger, because that gold digger is only going to help him dig his grave. Correct. And I'm going to push the button real hard now. You know one result of that now? When he cannot function because he's so down and she's not satisfied, well,
he leaves it.
You know what that means? Got to go where it is available. So it is so critical that balance, working together, and I strongly advocate family meeting. If you find that it is not working out, you sit down together and get professional help to guide it along. It's dangerous, any extreme. Any extreme. And by the way, let me, since I talk about extreme too, there is the man who will also bring about his sexual dysfunction too by being hypersexual. He just, because this is, boy, I'm a hardworking man, you know, and the only thing I can get is my sex when I come home. He's going to burn out too. Balance is the answer, Doc.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So yes. So we talk about temperance here, definitely.
Yes.
Being temperate in all things. But then there is a whole, as we say, communication sometimes is a big issue here in terms of talking to your partner and having the comfort of talking to your partner. And how can we get, especially men who possibly have this thing, to communicate more? How do we get them to communicate?
Well, yeah, communication. While women are gifted in expressing their feelings and emotions, communication is more than words, because sometimes the manner in which the partner, the female partner, expresses his or her concern or even her care for her male partner, it becomes a source of added stress. So the whole notion of sitting down and having a family meeting and deciding to go see a counselor, I think we're more often than not targeting the upper middle class and the upper class, because ordinary people, if you express dissatisfaction with their function, you are declaring war. You've just attacked my manhood. You've just said to me that I'm worthless. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So this whole question of, what do I do? How do I communicate? While we are talking about sexual dysfunction, we also have to have that component of how we can share what we're thinking and feeling without the other feeling that they're being attacked. So I am feeling a high level of dissatisfaction right now. You're not saying you're not performing, you're not doing what you're supposed to do sexually. You're saying I'm not feeling satisfied. The key or the keen listener is going to say, "What you say?" Or "What are you saying? Tell me more about what you're saying." And as you continue to talk about you, not about him, not about her, but you're talking about yourself, be open and vulnerable. Let your feelings and your thoughts be known. And so hopefully your partner is going to pick up and learn from what you're saying about you. I have observed about myself that when I am tired, I don't last as long. Okay, I hear you. I recognize that too. And I understand that. Is there something that I can do to relieve some of the stresses in your life? Maybe not. Or, maybe we just need to develop a new rhythm in life. The whole notion of, I've got to do this, in one of our programs, someone said that, hey, if I'm not going to have sex with my wife, I might as well go sleep in another room. Now, the implication for that was that every night there's going to be sex. And as was pointed out earlier, physiologically, we cannot sustain that over time. So the person who is right now saying or thinking that I have to have sex every night when the time comes, when that person is able to maintain that pace, it is going to impact on his self-esteem and going to create another set of problems. And by the way, this is how extramarital relationships get started, because a lot of stress is built up here in the primary relationship, and you seem not able to do anything to overcome those stressors, and so you're drawn to a less stressful situation, because we know that stress and anxiety has a negative impact on spiritual and sexual functionality, to use Dr. Gordon's phrase, the functionality. So communication is being able to know where I am personally, emotionally, physically, and be able to communicate that. And for my partner to understand where I am. And if there's some things that I can control and correct, I should be willing to do that. If my mate can assist me in rearranging things in my life so that my life becomes less stressful, then so it is. And Dr. Gordon mentioned the point that the woman who stresses out her man will find another man somewhere when the man is gone, or when the man, is just out of function.
May I just add there to a point? I also recommend what I call the managed social dynamics. Men, we talk about, men do not talk. When I served as family ministries director of my conference, I advocated men's club, men's fraternity, not only the pastor's fraternity, but men's club, and I use the word managed, where they don't just play dominoes and chit chat, but they get experienced and professional men to come in and rap with them. We know that men do not like to be lectured to, so we rap and we allow flow, but managed, so that their ignorance can be shed. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, Hosea chapter 6:4. And part of the knowledge is that a lot of us are totally ignorant about the dynamics of our body and our sexuality. Because remember too, we are products of an ill-informed society. So when we have these groups where men are helped to meet themselves and understand themselves in a social setting, then some eyes will be opened. So that's another way, men's group, men dynamic, and have someone who can rap with them so that some of their ignorance can be shed.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Wedderburn.
Okay, I think a lot of doctors, they're unwilling to open a conversation with their patient about sexuality. A patient comes to them for a checkup and they're willing to say, okay, your pressure is good, your heart is beating good, your abdomen is all right, but there's nothing about their sexuality. And this is where I think if the doctors are willing to open a conversation, it will help these men. Because their patient are willing to be first to say to their doctor, Doc, I'm not performing. But once the doctor asks, so Mr. Brown, how are you with your performance? You said, Doc, so it's true, glad you mentioned that. For the past 3 months or so, I'm not functioning, I'm not performing well. And that opens a discussion where the man can be helped. Yeah. So the doctors need to be a part of the discussion to help these men who are willing to come forward with their problems.
Thank you, Dr. Wedderburn. And it's very important, because as your primary care physicians, as we're supposed to be doing, you're supposed to be actually treating the patient as a whole. And it's not just his high blood pressure or his diabetes, but how does it affect him, his life on a whole? How does it affect his day-to-day activities? How does it affect him? What is it doing? Is it making him sad? Is it making him depressed? Is it making him having problems at home? And these are certain things. And I agree that you actually speak about this. And that's something that as physicians, we need to be able to address in managing our patients, not just treat the the imminent problem, but also dive more into the patient's mental health, physical health, emotional health, and if spiritual help, if you so desire.
Definitely.
But there's a question, and it says, how do we reach out to those men with fickle ego? They refuse to listen. How do we advise? And I think we've basically touched on that, and saying that, you know, we can basically drive the horse to the water, but we can't force him to drink. So you give him the knowledge and give him the tools to work with and pray. And with God, hopefully, you know, these things can be addressed. Another question,
may I just make a point there? Sometimes when I'm in doing therapy sessions, and if the wife is there alone, I talk about doing vicarious counseling. That is to say, while I address her as to the concern she's having, I also help her to find the ways how she can say some things in a non-threatening, non-counseling way, and help her husband's awareness, vicarious. So she learns for herself and, you know, help him pass it on. I talk to them sometimes about what we call the pillow talk. You know, the pillow talk is those times when he or both of you are very vulnerable, when all the arms are down, and you can, you know, say, by the way, in fact, use affirmation first of all. So if a lady is listening to me, use affirmation. Hey, you know, I like how so and so, you know, when, boy, I really wish we could work on that. By the way, have you ever thought about so and so? You know, I was hearing so and so. So she share with him, because sometimes she's the one who can reach him. So she doesn't reach him only with the complaint. But if she's armed with the skill to get to his heart, of course, with prayer, but she learned the information, said, pass it on. Yes, man, try this. You want me? You go, so. Yes, so the point I'm talking about is the lady being prepared, vicariously learning the art of helping him and how to pass it on to him. Because we know, oh yes, that some men are really hard-headed. But I have good news from my counseling practice. I'm seeing a lot of men coming forward. More men are coming forward. Doctors, you know that too. It's changing. It might not be at the pace, but all is not lost. So what we're doing here now is just emphasizing it, but some changes on the way.
Yeah. And there's, thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. There's another question that says, should all of this be a part of premarital counseling?
You're touching me now. That's my baby. Yes, that's the issue now. You see, if we do not, I do about 16 or so couples every year. I have maybe about 5 or 6 right now preparing. And the quality of their sexual life takes up about sometimes 2 or 3 sessions. Because first of all, let me remind us that we have to deal with, when we come to talk about sexual dysfunction, that's another story, but let me just fast forward it. Remember too, that there are the taboos, there's the stigmas out there, and they are picking up these, and they persons go into marriage with these ill-informed concepts, perspectives, and as a result, it impairs their natural openness and flow. So the answer to the question, absolutely. And it must be done in a clinical way. You know, don't just talk nice to them. That's why those of us who are doing premarital counseling, I make sure I put the adjective professional before premarital, professional premarital counseling, so that they're properly educated and know what they're going to need. Definitely the answer, it must be a part of it.
Thank you so much. And I'm just trying to address some of the questions that are in the chat. And there is a question about temperate sexual function. I'm not sure what is considered temperate sexual function. I'm thinking that means sexual activity. I'm not sure what it means. Dr. Wedderburn, do you want to address that one for me?
Well, yeah, when I hear the word temperate, we think of temperance. And as Dr. Gordon earlier said, that if the man keeps on having sex every night, he's going to burn out. Now, if the man keeps on having intercourse every night for a long time, he gets a prostatitis. You know, you've heard of women who just got married having honeymoon cystitis. That's when the bladder gets inflamed and she passes urine very often with burning. Her husband just got married. He has sex every night for weeks. He gets honeymoon prostatitis. The prostate gets inflamed, and an inflamed prostate can actually affect one's performance sexually. He won't have erectile dysfunction, but he'll have sexual dysfunction. In fact, he may have it difficult to get up. When he starts having sex, he's going to ejaculate early, may have premature ejaculation. He'll have back pains which will prevent him from performing. So a temperate sexuality means that having sex 2 or 3 times per week on the average, yes? And when your spouse is seeing her menstrual flow, you know that 5 days is out anyway. So on average, 2 or 3 times per week should be good. But you know, young men in their 20s just got married, they say, oh, they feel like, I mean, we all went through that as young men, you know, every night. But as one ages, yeah, a man in his 50s, 60s may have problem getting erection every night. So he's really curtailed by his physiology. He may just get erection twice per week. When he gets to 80, maybe just once a month he gets erection. So the temperate part of it refers to the younger man who is able to have intercourse every night.
Okay, there are 2 other questions that we have already answered. And one was, how does diabetes play a role in sexual dysfunction? And I think Dr. Wedderburn went a lot. I'm not sure if the person came late, but Dr. Wedderburn went a lot into this. And we talked about a lot about chronic medical illnesses, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol, and all of these things in terms of the role that they play in erectile dysfunction. And the other question that was asked is natural remedies. And we already established that this is not the forum, because even though we have a little knowledge, we do not have a lot of knowledge on natural remedies. Unfortunately, we do not have a naturopath or somebody who practices naturopathic medicine here who can give us a lot more information on natural remedies. But we know that there are natural remedies that can be used for erectile dysfunction alongside the medicines that we use in our practice. But it would a matter of also, and if somebody decides to use natural remedies, it behoves that person to actually discuss it with their physician as to say, what am I using in addition to what you're giving me that will help? And if there's any change in the problem, then that's something that can be addressed, or you should bring it to the knowledge of your doctor, because you don't want to have any interaction with medications that you're taking with the natural stuff that you're actually using. So it's good to discuss it with your physician. Nobody's saying don't use your natural stuff, do not use it, but at least bring it to the forefront. Speak to your doctor about what you're using. Correct, Dr. Wedderburn?
100%, 100%.
Okay, and there's another question that just came in that I'm gonna take. It says, the quality of sex more than the quantity. Oh yes, correct. Somebody just said the quality of sex more than the quantity is what older men thrives on. So that was just a comment that was made in the chat. So yes, we have been talking a lot about erectile dysfunction, and it's very important that we actually clear up a lot of the myths and the problems that we have, knowing that it's not just physiological. Right. And as Dr. Bulgin says, there are times when we have to go on our knees and pray, because we have other problems that are not just physical. And that's something. But then as a church, Dr. Bulgin, how can we help? Because I heard Dr. Gordon said that he actually advocated for a lot of these men functions, a lot of these functions where men would meet men. But we're supposed to have things like men's ministry in our church, where we're supposed to be addressing, because of course they might be upset with their wives and don't want to talk to their wives, or they're not going to talk to a woman about all of this. But how can we help in terms of our church to reach these men or these families that are having these issues? There's family life ministry, but sometimes they don't want to talk. What can we do?
Well, I think you answered that question earlier, that you can lead the horse to the water, but you cannot make them drink. The reality is that there's a streak in all of us as male that more often than not inhibits that fair exchange, because we are geared towards problem solving. And as Dr. Gordon said earlier, that some think that if they don't have the answer does not exist. Within the church, however, I think we have fostered an atmosphere that we should all be good, and I put good in quotation marks. In other words, when people become vulnerable within the context of the church, we tend to ostracize them. They don't feel that they can openly speak about the challenges that they have. And so I think a part of our task as church leaders is to model an accepting and a warm and caring environment, so that it becomes easier. Because let me take myself as the pastor. If I were to put my quote unquote weakness out there, then I instantly close the minds of some, and I raise the bar in terms of the critical nature of those who didn't like me in the first place, and those who trusted me. I might run the risk of eroding the trust. So we have not created within the body of Christ this openness to be able to deal effectively with our weaknesses. And at the heart of the marriage relationship and the sexual experience is the same. If for any reason something is going on with me and I can't function like I'm expected to function, then my mate either withdraws or asks questions in a blaming way. What's wrong with me? Why you're not functioning? Nothing may be wrong with her. It could all be about what's going on with me in the moment. And because we are not open to speak openly about those challenges, we internalize them. And when they're internalized, they further complicate the matter. So yes, in the men's group, we can begin to sensitize our men to the need to open up and provide this forum, not just to play dominoes until 3 o'clock in the morning, but mingled with that, let's have some educational component to it if it's being organized through the men's ministry or the family ministries council, and then go play the dominoes. And it's hard for us as men to get together and play dominoes and not eat fried dumpling and whatever else that goes with it, even though those things are going to add to the obesity. And so it's a fine line, but it can be done. This openness, this permissive atmosphere where people can talk openly about what they're dealing with and not be penalized or ostracized as a result.
May I just add a little note there? Some years ago, I was conducting a presentation in church, and I made a statement that produced nearly an earthquake in the large congregation. What did I say? I said, each man needs a man. Oh, wow. You can understand the shaking. No, of course, it's the homophobia situation that's coming in here. But men's mentoring is a major matter. So whereas I advocate the men's club, the grouping, it is important that senior, experienced men, in a healthy way, take one or young man under his wing. I'm not advocating, them in closed room because everything is questionable these days. But the point I'm making is that fathers in Israel, thank you, Lord, fathers in Israel, experienced men need to look out for these younger men. Let me share something with you. One of my practice is that when I go to any church at all, across the world, and I see a young man did a good job, while I'm shaking hands or meeting them, I sometimes try to pull him aside and say, hello, man, I just want to know how proud I am of you. You did so well. You read that scripture so good. Point is, when we men avail, or the experienced ones, avail ourselves to be brothers, we can help also to shed some of the ignorance there is. So in that same, the men's club, the deacons and the elders, can also, in a personal way, not intruding, but find a way to affirm and be there, because ladies find it easier to interact and open up with each other. Men, because of our psychosocial upbringing, that man must, one of the effect of testosterone and the brain is that it is make male competitive by nature. And so no one must know that I didn't know that. But a good mentoring can help to break that down also.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. So we learned quite a bit this evening, and it's almost evening, this afternoon. And before we leave, I want to ask you if you have any final points that you want to rest with us, that you want to leave with us. If not, I'll just do a summary of what you presented.
Yeah, before Dr. Wedderburn, before you make your final point, okay, I want to ask the question. So in your final point, you can probably address it. A lot of us want immediate fixes. The question is, if one is experiencing erectile dysfunction, how long should one expect that some kind of improvement or healing could be seen if it's a correctable situation?
Okay, good question. The fact is it depends on the causative factor. If it's a psychosomatic problem, then I find that most men, when they have this problem, they're a bit depressed. You send to a psychologist or you put them on a antidepressant and it works. I've had patients who I put on antidepressants and man, they come back singing praises. Doc, I know the pill was so good. I'm functioning very well. And to talk to the individual is very important, because most time they're not really aware of what's happening to their mind. Yeah. So actually speaking to the patient and giving a proper treatment if it's a correctable problem. Now, if it's something like a vessel problem like diabetes, yes, or atherosclerosis or high cholesterol, the treatment may have to go over a period of time. It may take months for one to see improvement, but they have to be advised that it's a slow process and they should not expect a quick fix. Okay? I was going to also say that at our men's ministers forum, a lot of men are not willing to be identified with their questions. So if they stand up and ask a question, they feel that the men in the group will say, oh, I didn't know that was happening to him. Man, I didn't know he's young and I didn't know all this. So they think that whatever question they ask, it will suggest that they're the ones who are going through these conditions. So I'm actually saying that for these meetings, if the question should be written, if you have a written question, which is placed in a box, yes, and the person who is conducting the meeting picks a question from the box instead of asking the participant to stand up and ask individual questions. That should help some.
In terms of final input, Doc, I just like to swing a wide arc on the matter of sexual dysfunction, or rather, yes, erectile dysfunction. The wide arc has to do with the upper aging factor. There's a presentation that I did years ago. I titled it Intimacy Between the Pauses. I address the matter of understanding intimacy in the aging process and how the aging couple can enjoy quality, intimate relationship, which might not always have to be penile or penetration.
Indeed.
So you see, and that's a major subject I find as I relate with older couples. So the question I ask, can there be intimacy between the pauses, menopause and andropause? The answer is yes. So if we just latch onto penile, vaginal contact, penetration, then this older man can get frustrated and thinking that he can no longer be intimate. So just putting it on the group, to say, as I said, I swing a wide arc,
Sure.
Moving away from that and say, look here, up there, they need help too, with the understanding that it's not made, we don't limit it to penile, vaginal contact. But yes, they can contact and they can experience satisfaction, because remember, at the end of the day, the major sexual organ is not the genitals, it's the brain.
Indeed.
And relationship, those of you who know my practice is family relational health. And my foundation theory is all human relationship begin and continue to exist in the mind. Work on it and they can enjoy it right up to the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Support that.
And so in connection with that, whatever is beautiful, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good report, whatever, think on these things. What we see, we tend to become. And so if we work on making sure that we clear the clutter out of our relationships, it is going to put us in good stead to function in all of the other areas of our lives. So don't think that you cannot get to a high level of satisfaction in your sexual relationship. The way to getting there is thinking clearly, thinking pure thoughts, thinking optimistically. Remove the stressors from your life, remove the anxieties, take care of your health. God is able, and God is the originator of the whole person, not just the mind and the heart, but he's the originator, he's the creator of the whole person, and he wants wholeness. He wants us to enjoy life more abundantly. So we can do that when we follow the divine blueprint throughout life.
Thank you so much, panelists. And I was about to do a summary, but a question just came up, and I just think I should address all questions. It just says, and this is the last one now, guys. How much can environmental factors such as lighting, clothing, music, body language, etc. play in alleviating erectile dysfunction? Anybody wants to take this last question, and then we move on?
Well, if I'm sure one of the other professionals will add to it. But if the mind is not where it is supposed to be, if the mind is not clear, if the mind is not void of negative feelings. You could dress up, you could light up, you could create all kind of ambiance. The fact is that if the mind is not engaged, if the mind is not ready, more than not, nothing is going to happen. So if it begins and ends with the mind, then certainly the person who is not having the problem might put on the right clothing, might put on the right perfume, might create put on the right set of music, put on the right degree of lighting or no light, and nothing will happen. So the mind needs to be cleared. And the way to clear the mind, as I said earlier, is to think on the noble things of life. And sex is not unnoble. It is as noble as any other spiritual dimension in your life.
Thank you, Dr. Bulgin. Thank you so much. So go ahead.
Yes, yes, we should not take for granted environmental factors on our lives. Sound, light, the air, and all these environmental factors do register on our physiology in minute, but nonetheless accumulative ways. And as they affect us psychologically, they can affect us physiologically. Studies have shown how managing light, for example, at night can impact our physiological function. Because, the pineal gland, well, we're not going to go into all of these physiological factors, but the fact is that we should not make light of these. And in forum, every now and then, these apparently minute factors need to be born, because they do weigh in their own way on the quality of health. And indeed, yes, if the environment is not healthy, then it can affect a man's ability to perform, because it can throw his system out. Minute, but registered.
Yeah,
so the answer to my question is yes.
Yes, they can. They are enhancing qualities, but
Right.
they're not the primary drivers.
Oh, no. That's why I did say minute, but they can accumulate, but they are not enough to take a whole forum, except we're going to have some clinical, some person is going to really go into all of the details in it. But the point I make is that we should not gainsay that environmental factors do register on our system.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, panelists. So in summary, Dr. Wedderburn did mention that erectile dysfunction, he gave us a definition, and it's actually, he says there's a time limit on it, and it's not just that you're having inability to get an erection and maintain an erection today and tomorrow you're fine. That's not erectile dysfunction. It has to be maintained, and he did give a time limit of greater than 6 months. He also mentioned that there are a number of causes, which will be chronic medical disorders like heart disease, atherosclerosis, high blood pressure medications, drugs, smoking, alcohol, marijuana, and other things, age, metabolic syndrome, and whether it's going to be psychological or physiological, there are a number of treatment modalities that he had mentioned. So it's a matter of talking to your doctor about your problem. Dr. Gordon talked about a social salacious ignorance of erectile dysfunction, and brought us back to the fact that our entire being, we were made in the image of God, and God cares about us in terms of or human sexuality or erectile dysfunction. He cares about it, and he wants us to be healthy because he has put us on this earth for not just to glorify him, but also for us to have as social beings, to have a happy life. And this is a part of making us happy in order to enjoy sexual satisfaction, and also to procreate, to have children. And Dr. Bulgin did mention that there are certain things that we have done possibly in our lives that has caused us to end up with problems, or as a result of our lifestyle, and as a result of that, men might get erectile dysfunction, and we'll have to live with it. But we can always go to God and ask him for forgiveness and for help to deal with all of these problems. And he also, as a church, we can create a healthy environment where not just men, but people can actually come and talk about their problems. And remember, the church is a hospital, and it's not just a hospital, it's a hospital for healing. So if we create that environment in our church, a lot of our problems, a lot of things that we have issues with can be addressed as a church. And this is where we end. Thank you so much for participating, our panelists. Thank you so much for all the information that you have shared with us all. We have benefited richly from all of this. Thank you so much for being here, and our audience. Thank you again. I pass it on to Miss Regino.
Most welcome. Karen?
Yes, sir.
I'll say hi to Chris for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis Harvey. Again, we just want to thank you for always steering the discussion in a great manner. You always bring out the information out of our panelists, and we want to thank you for that. We also want to thank our panelists. Your expertise was appreciated, and I'm just going to take this comment from Sister Gina's out of the chat. It was deep and engaging, so we're sure that our audience or viewers, they enjoyed it tremendously. Now, next week we'll be focusing on the topic of Stewardship 101, so you don't want to miss it. For staying on till the end. And at this time, Dr. Bulgin will close us off with Vesper.
Okay, thank you so much. If we would look at Romans chapter 14, verse 1, it says, receive one who is weak in the faith, but not to dispute over doubtful things. For one believes that he may eat all things, but he who is weak eats only vegetables. Let not him who eats despise him who does not eat, and let not him who does not eat judge him who does eat, for God has received him. We haven't delved deeply into the impact of diet on erectile dysfunction, but we do know that of the truism, we are what we eat. And so here, Paul, in the application section of the book of Romans, tells us that we are to receive the one who is weak in the faith. In other words, the principle here is that the individuals who are having these problems should not feel that they have no voice, they have no outlet, they have no recourse. Those who have the information, those who are strong, those who know what to do, should not look down on those who don't, but we should be willing to engage in a forum like we have been engaged in, to share the information, put it out there in cyberspace, so that those who don't feel comfortable in participating in it in a forum where all of us are actively participating can go there and find the information, relate to it, be informed, be instructed, and then become knowledgeable so that when they see their physician or their specialist, they can raise the pertinent question. The fact is that within the context of the church, we sometimes look down on those who talk about their weaknesses, talk about their shortcomings. What Paul is counseling us here is that if we have achieved, in fact, in Galatians, he says, those who are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak. So this symbiotic relationship between the strong and the weak has to do not only with food and with other areas of life, but the principle is applicable across the board. And so what I would suggest, what I would recommend as we go into this untried week, that we make a commitment not to pass judgment on individuals who are experiencing difficulty. If we become aware of their deficit, rather than mocking them, rather than targeting them, rather than making them feel less than, we are to come alongside of them and walk with them. And if we don't have the information, we can steer them to individuals, professionals who can provide them the help that they need, because that's what God expects of us. That's what spirituality is all about. That's what being a part of a spiritual community is all about, where we are bearing one another's burden, where we are sensitive, so that when the weak displays his or her weakness, rather than becoming victimized for it, they feel supported and encouraged and strengthened. So this one another, in fact, we are counseled to think of the other better than ourselves. And so this I am encouraging us to do, that whether, that we pay attention, because the fundamental imagery that Paul draws here is that we ought to pay attention to what we eat, because we are what we eat. As someone rightly said, let your food be your medicine. In other words, rather than going recklessly along and eating everything that comes aside, be discerning, be selective. And when you do that, even after you've done your very best and eat the very best things, you might become ill. You might develop some of these conditions, but your body will be in a better place to fight and to resist and to overcome those things. And as I said, it's not just in the context of the church, but when we come alongside that person who is suffering from an infirmity, let's not victimize them. Let's come alongside and give them hope, because that's what it's all about. Jesus came alongside of us and gave us hope. And ultimately, his purpose for us will be accomplished. Jesus is our best friend, and he walks with us and he talks with us and he reminds us we belong to him. And his will for us is that we prosper and be in health. Erectile dysfunction might not be easily cured in a couple of weeks, but if we take the corrective measures and we do what we can, certainly the quality of our sexual functionality will improve and we will be the better for it. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the time we have spent together. We have placed this information out there in cyberspace. We know that there are many who have listened and participated this afternoon who have benefited from it. But Lord, it will have a rippling effect through time as we spread the word and we let people know that the information is there. Lord, as we live out the principles of the gospel during this week, may we come to its end with a sense of satisfaction that we came alongside someone that we could help and help them, so that our living will not be in vain. Thank you for blessing and guiding us in Jesus' name. Amen.